Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to reconvene our work sessions for June 8th, 2021. Gary, what's up next?
Thank you, Chair. Our first session today is Veterans Advisory Council update. We have staff from Health, Housing, and Human Services to present. Rod Cook is the interim director. Rod, would you introduce our guests, please?
Yes, we have with us Tracy Bogard. She is the chair of the Veterans Advisory Committee, and Brenda Durbin, director of Social Services. And they're here. Tracy, in particular, being the chair of we call it the VAC. I'll probably say that throughout this presentation. Kind of presided over the meetings that came up with the product that we are presenting to you today. And so I don't know if she wanted to say hello to you or have any.
I know most of you, but hello. Hi, good to see you.
Okay. And Brenda Durbin, of course, is her staff staffs the committee and the Veterans Office that we may give reference to as well. But we're here today I'll just read this little bit of the executive summary, so just put some framework for it. On March 30, 2021, County Administrator Schmidt submitted to the BCC an interim HVS and myself a list of recommendations or next steps specific to the Veterans Advisory Council. Next steps included actions that the VAC would address as well as county staff. The timeline included reporting back to the Board of County Commissioners in June 2021 with the status update and or completion of the various tasks. So you have the packet, and there was a report completed. It's pretty extensive, so what I'll read now are the highlights from that. And then if you have any detailed questions about any of the sections, we're here to answer those questions for you, if that's okay. But basically, if you look throughout the document, the report that should be included, one of the assignments was to prepare an updated work plan and goals for next year. What we found out in the course of this activity is that July is the actual timeline where this group naturally would have updated its plan. So we're asking you in this process to allow for that process to take place. I know that in their conversations, they've also added some elements to that process. That will include a survey of veterans to kind of see what their issues are, what they're saying in the community, what they're saying about work, what they're saying about all the different types of issues that might address vets. So we think that's a pretty great addition to that whole process. That's going to be completed by July 1, and that's the plan itself. Online opportunities to support veterans' goals and priorities within both Clackamas County and HES department's performance, Clackamas priorities and results. That plan is also going to be completed by July 31st, so that'll be part of the plan and talked about in that formal plan. And that's just really looking at all our MFR goals and aligning all our activities to say that all these activities will lead to this result. And so you wanted to see an alignment, and we're going to make sure the plan does that when we present that to you. Bylaws were updated, including a review of the membership and membership requirements for the VAC. Proposed bylaws are completed, or a draft of those. You would have to adopt those, and those should be in the packet for your review. We have recommendations on how to better engage with the Board of County Commissioners, and that piece is already completed. We have a revision of the VAC mission purpose statement. That piece has been completed. Recommendations for better engagement with external veterans community, National Guard, and Camp Withicum, and that's been completed. And I think Commissioner Schrader and some others have assisted me in setting up a meeting with the general at Camp Withicum. So we're well on our way to beginning to create some new opportunities and build some relationships directly with the leadership there. And then sponsor and identify veterans events in the community for the Board of County Commissioners and staff to engage in. And we'll have that part as our end plan as well. In the documents, and I don't, it's several pages. So I don't know if you want me to go through each page or if you have already read it and you just would like us to respond to questions. What's the best course of action?
Yeah, just questions.
Did you just have questions?
Mark?
I don't think you need, Rod, I don't think you need to read the whole thing. We've had a chance to read it completed.
Obviously, I would say that you have made a lot of progress. You know, staff, thank you for all the progress you have made, and you got a little bit farther to go, and we're almost at the finish line. My only observation or question, and maybe this is for the administrator perhaps, and that is, I know that years back when we were updating bylaws, our goal was to streamline them, right? So they're, I mean, not that they're all exactly the same, right? But they're, you know, relatively the same. So, and I see that the package says we're not asking for approval at this time, but so there will be a, you know, what is the next step and legal review and all of that? And if there's any edits coming out of legal, for example, does that go back to the committee or does that just stay here in-house?
Yes, I can answer that question. Thank you, Commissioner. Can you hear me okay?
The more you move that closer, the better.
Okay, how's that?
Much
Okay,
better,
great.
thank you.
So our bylaws require a period of time between proposed changes and adoption by the Veterans Advisory Council. And with this process, we didn't have time for that designated time frame. We also wanted to make sure that we came to you first and make sure that we were on the right track from your perspective. So what we'll do, assuming that you approve this report, we'll go back and do a formal vote on the revised bylaws at our June meeting. I think we've got time at our June meeting, or June or July meeting. We don't have, sorry, don't have time for our June meeting. At our July meeting, we'll formally vote to adopt the changes, and then those will come to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval.
Okay. So Gary, does that sound like a good process, or should legal look at it first to make sure it's awfully close?
I suggest that our county council review first before it goes to the VAC committee, and then after the committee gives its approval, it does go to the Board of County Commissioners, and they give the final approval, and they may send it back to you to make some changes. So I don't want to be respectful of your time, but also let you know the process. So there could be another reiteration of this before we're totally done.
Yeah, because we do legal counsel last, then that means we
Yeah.
might have to circle back to the VAC again. We wouldn't want to,
Yeah.
you know,
That makes
extend this
sense.
any longer than we have to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So, other comments, Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for this work. I think it's really going to revitalize the VAC and, you know, really get some more engagement and direct activities out there, which I think that we really need to be doing. The only suggestion I might have is, as I was thinking through this, is there, you know, there's a lot about services here, and I would just like to make sure that we also highlight workforce services and where that, you know, that lies too, because that's where we kind of have that connection to the community college. And where biggest thing when we talked to veterans coming back was actually finding jobs. Some of them, you know, did have PTSD and other issues that you know, that were barriers and challenges. Some of them really just needed that pipeline. So I would just like to stress that a little bit, that workforce in terms of economic development, it should be a pretty big component of this. And I know Clackamas Community College sits at the table.
Clackamas County Community College, they're definitely at the table. We also have, while he's not a member because he's a county employee, Kenny Beechik from the Veterans Employment Office regularly comes, updates us on his activities. So I feel like, you know, we've got some good membership, but very interested in your thoughts about how we can maybe make that a little bit stronger.
Okay.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for all your work for the past few months. On the revised council bylaws, Section 1A, the council shall be composed of no more than 20 members, 16 veterans, 2 relatives of veterans, and 2 community members. Now, that's 20. Are they all going to be voting members?
Yes.
Okay. And you currently have 15 on the council. Okay, I would just ask you to consider modifying that by 1 somewhere so you have an odd number of voting members in your council. It might not make any difference when you take votes, but then again, you're going to have less chances of having a tie if you have an odd number. Other than that, I think everything looks good, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we always try to shoot for odd numbers for that very reason, so that might be one thing that, I don't know how what the composition change would be to get there, whether it's a reduction or an add, but
Okay.
that might be something
Yeah, we can definitely, that makes a whole lot of sense, and we'll go back to the board and decide, do we add one more veteran, which is, I assume, probably what we're going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anything, Commissioner Fisher? Or is that who's up? I got Christina's up.
Oh,
Okay. Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Chair Savis. How does that sound?
No comment.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. And Tracy, it's so nice to see you. I particularly like the increased involvement with the commission. It's something that I think will be really beneficial for all of us. And so I like the way that that is embedded in this plan. I also like the survey, going out and getting some information, especially veteran-specific. What's the impact of COVID-19? What kind of assistance do you need? Really engaging directly with our veterans community, I think will be very useful, not only for the council, but for us as well, as to really have a good eye on where we need to direct resources and any policy changes that are needed. So I really appreciate that. I have so enjoyed talking with the different members of the Veterans Advisory Council and getting thoughts and experience and ideas during this last few months. Such committed individuals, and so I really honor every member of the VAC and appreciate so much this is not an easy time to be an advisory council to a local government. It's very challenging. So I just want to say thank you. I'm looking forward to more interactions, and the other thing, okay, I know I'm just giving all this praise here, but getting the list of events, because now we're opening up again, and there are certain things pre-COVID I think we can all say that we took for granted. Certain kinds of events that we thought would always be there perchance, but now we don't take those events for granted. So I'll really appreciate getting information from the VAC as to what events the commission should be engaged in and what you would recommend for us to attend. And just that advice, because we need you. We really do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, excellent. Just want to build a little bit on Commissioner Schrader's points a little bit with regard to the workforce opportunities. And I know that working with veterans, that their training, their discipline, they're mission-oriented. They like to get stuff done. That's their nature. And I truly appreciate that. And I was watching a piece on the national news here not too long ago where they were talking about the shortage of workforce in the country and that veterans are a ideal candidate for a lot of those positions because of their training and their discipline and so forth. So whatever we can do to build our workforce and engage and help out. And the other thing I will just say, my other experience is that, they're also the first to come and be advocates for their comrades, so that's always appreciated. And if they're homeless or they're in dire straits, whatever, that they're also very focused on that. So I have a tremendous amount of appreciation. Growing up in a military environment myself, not a veteran, but in a military environment, I've know that firsthand. So thank you for all your work on putting this all back together. And next steps, I guess, Gary, just to round it up, legal counsel to review the bylaws and then goes to the VAC and then comes back to us for final approval at some point. Is that correct?
For the bylaws, yes, and then there are other items that will be completed July 31st that should be reported back to you. So this is more of a status update, and if you have any concerns or questions, to share them. You have shared your questions. I just want to say thank you to the committee, council. You did a fantastic job, and staff as well. Thank you for your work on this and taking it very seriously, and I am very impressed with what you came up with, so thank you very much.
And I, Mr. Chair, I have one thing to say, because I don't know if this ever gets said, but the volunteers, the community members worked hard through a lot of these process bylaws, and all those are, complex things. They really put their heart and soul into it. So I really want to thank them. And the other part that was happening was we approached many of you, commissioners, and the administrator, interviewing you on what this needed to look like and what to be a bigger and better process, be a more influential in the community. And so you gave of yourselves to this as well. So we know that you're committed to vets, and we appreciate your work on this project as well, even though we're the ones presenting today. So thank you for all your support in moving this forward.
Yeah. Thanks again for all your work, and does that conclude our session? Any other recommendations we need to follow up on?
No, you don't need to vote today. If you're satisfied with the plan, it sounds like you are, then just a head nod of good work and keep going. That's what I've heard, so.
Thank you all,
Great. Thank you very much.
and we are early.
We're early, but our presenters are here, so if you'd like to move forward, we could do that.
Let's do that.
Okay, so let's just wait, Tracy's here too. All right, so next is the Association of Oregon Counties dues structure. Commissioners, you requested this session today, and we're here to provide that. Tracy Moreland from County Administration will kick it off, and we have a special guest, Gina Nickel, who is the Executive Director of the Association of Oregon Counties. So Tracy, would you please start out the session?
Yes, thank you, Gary, and good afternoon, Commissioners. So yeah, I think that most of the time we'll save for Gina to do her presentation, but I just wanted to mention just quickly the Association of Oregon Counties. It's a statewide organization that supports Oregon's 36 counties through advocacy, information sharing, and training, among its many services it provides. And there's many committees, and the board of director meets regularly, and we participate on those. And staff, I think most county departments works with AOC. They recently changed their due structure, and that's set to begin in 2022. And last April, this board, you all requested an informational policy session to learn about the dues changes and the structure itself. So AOC Director Gina Nickel is here today to give a short presentation and answer any questions that you all have about the changes that are set to happen here. And I think we have some slides to go along with the presentation. Right, that's ready. Okay, Gina?
Good afternoon.
Commissioners
Did you drive up from
Savas.
Salem, or?
From just across, I live in Wilsonville. We're not quite in the office yet. July 1st, we'll be in the office in Salem.
Great, well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Commissioners Savas, Schrader, Fisher, and Scholl. Thank you for inviting me here, and I'm glad to talk about the new dues structure, and I will answer any questions that you have. Now, I will have to say this is my first presentation with the mask on because we've been working remotely. So hopefully I can read it without my glasses because they fog up. I know you get it.
Mine are fogging up as we speak.
Good. First of all, I would like to provide you with an overview of the AOC dues structure and changes approved by the AOC Board of Directors in May, and the impact to Clackamas County dues starting in 2022. And I'll answer any questions you might have on the next steps. Let's go to slide 2. Over the past 3 years, the AOC membership has been addressing the dues structure to address a lack of dues increases over the past 15 years. Now, you can imagine that's challenging with lost revenue from unpaid voluntary dues and no increases in the past 15 years. And there's been confusion over the dues formula and the equity of the dues formula. The AOC bylaws state that the total membership dues amount and the annual budget shall adequately provide for all the association activities. Over the years, this has not been followed, and reserves have been used to cover the deficit. Due to a lack of transparency in our budget prior to 2018, it was difficult for us to determine if we were adequately providing for all association activities. Following a forensic audit in 2018, we learned that we were not covering our expenses and deficit spending was happening year after year. For some additional background, in 2006, the dues base fee was $4,050. So over the last 15 years, the dues base fee has increased to $5,150. In 2017, we began discussions on how the lack of dues increases have impacted our organization, and how these decisions made it possible or impossible to keep up with the increased costs of services. Ultimately, this spurred the work of the Special Dues Task Force. As I mentioned previously, the forensic audit found that we were working at a deficit of about $160,000 a year. However, through discovery and new fiscal policies, accounting software, and a revised chart of accounts, AOC got back on track. In 2020, Membership Committee continued the work of the task force and recommended a population-based tiered structure for dues to the Budget and Finance Committee. At the annual meeting in 2020, the full AOC membership voted for a bylaws amendment that authorized the Board of Directors to approve the budget and remove the dues formula from the bylaws so the Board of Directors could make the decisions. Following this action by the full membership, the dues recommendation of the Membership Committee was vetted and discussed by the Budget and Finance Committee. This year, members were successful in modifying the dues structure for the long-term benefit of AOC and the counties through the Membership Committee, Budget and Finance Committee, and the full Board of Directors. Next slide. More specifically, over the past year, there have been many, many meetings and touch points regarding dues structure. These discussions ultimately led to the recommendation of the AOC Budget and Finance Committee with support from the AOC Membership Committee, and most recently in May, the approval of the dues structure by the AOC Board of Directors, as I have said. It is important to note that the dues structure is one component of the process to determine membership dues and each county's share of membership dues. The second part involves the total amount of membership dues assessed and the development of the annual budget. And as a point of reference, the budget process concludes each year in November at the annual conference business meeting, in which the full board votes on. To clarify, we have laid the foundation by approving a new dues structure that will allow us to stay financially sound while being equitable. The structure-approved process was a one-time endeavor. We will use that structure annually to determine county dues through a member-driven annual budget development and approval process, where the membership will determine the total amount of dues. Next slide. To elaborate on this a little bit further, and the variables or considerations the Board of Directors and the membership make each year, the Budget and Finance Committee made recommendations to the Board of Directors on budget cuts, increases required to maintain current service levels, and budget enhancements that would result in a dues increase. These considerations determine the total amount of membership dues assessed each year. Next slide. Once this number is determined, it is run through the dues structure. To determine the individual dues amount for each county, several things are considered. So AOC dues are calculated based on three factors: a base fee, percent of population, and percent of assessed value. These three figures make up the county share of dues. Now, if you are familiar with this previous formula, you will notice that the formula I described is the exact same. While the basic formula framework does not change, factors within that formula did change. One primary change is the move from a single base fee to a tiered based fee by population. Each county will be assessed a based fee on population in one of 7 brackets, ranging from $10,000 up to $40,000. Another change is that by increasing the base fee, the cap also increased from just over $100,000 to $200,000. Both the base fee and the cap were determined to be critical to ensure that one county does not pay too little and another county doesn't pay too much. The other change I will mention is the transition from required and voluntary dues to required dues only. Over the years, more and more counties were not paying the voluntary dues, and there was less money to cover services. Typically, AOC focuses on maintaining current service levels to minimize annual increases. One new element approved in the dues structure is that dues will be increased by 3% annually. There's never been an escalator in the dues that anybody can remember. I can only remember AOC for about the last 35 years, and there's never been an escalator. So it was determined that there will be at least a 3% annual escalator, up to a 5%, should the Board of Directors determine that this is necessary to adequately cover association expenses. Over 60% of AOC's budget is connected to salaries and benefits, which drive increases each year. In 2019, AOC conducted a salary survey for all positions. The results of the survey were implemented in 2020. Funds were budgeted to implement the survey, but annual increases to bring positions to market and keep them at market impact the budget, resulting in a dues increase annually. But I must say that we put the bottom at the top, meaning we're not really, people really aren't market until they're with us for 7 years and they hit our top step, because we've not been competitive in our salaries over the years, but we're getting there. The Budget and Finance Committee will continue conversations in this upcoming year around salary and benefit costs to evaluate options for Board of Directors considerations in the coming years. One challenge with salary increases is that the step plan for represented and non-represented employees is typically more than 5% each year. And that provides another issue that we're going to be having when all the union contracts come up. Additionally, travel is a significant expense for the organization to ensure that staff can move throughout the state. As you can imagine, we've had a one-time savings in the past year from travel, but we expect that to go up again now that most of our staff is vaccinated. While the organization is reliant on membership dues to cover expenses, work is continuing to minimize dues increases annually through non-dues revenue generated by sponsorships, the County Solutions team, and affinity agreements. So we're working on that. Another change to the dues structure is that all increases over 5% must be approved by the full membership. Now, what might be some increases that go up? We do not have a funded legislative director. That position exists, but it's not funded. Somebody just adds it onto their duties right now. That's probably not best for planning purposes, strategically looking at what our strategies is, but that's what we have. We do with what we have. The intention behind the changes to these budget procedures and enhancements are to be discussed, vetted, and approved by the full membership, so there's full accountability and that everybody has their eyes on things. Slide 6. Using the 2021 dues figures, you can see how the tiered base fee structure impacts all 36 counties and brings the amount of dues collected under the base fee portion of the structure to 53% of the total dues assessed. The financial impact to the dues structure impacts each county differently. Some counties see a slight increase, while others, like Clackamas County, will see a slight decrease in the total amount of dues assessed. Now, next slide, you're asking, okay, wait a minute, I don't see that difference here. It looks like ours are going up. What's that about? Let's talk about that. More specifically, Clackamas County will see a decrease in their share of county dues assessed in 2022 under the new structure, from $114,537 to $107,449. Even with a dues increase of 5% as projected for 2022 AOC budget development. In the past 3 years, Clackamas County has opted not to pay some voluntary dues assessment. So in 2021, because Clackamas County opted not to pay some voluntary dues, the payment made to AOC was $88,909, or $92,680 if you figure out the dues for federal lands and the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties. So, 2019, Clackamas County did not opt out of any voluntary dues and paid their full amount. In 2020, Clackamas County opts out of video lottery and PERS voluntary dues. In 2021, Clackamas County opts out of video, veterans, and PERS voluntary dues. So that's what lowered your dues. Now, since all our dues are rolled into one, we won't have that, and that's to stabilize our budget so we know what's going on. So what you'll see is while Clackamas will see an overall decrease in dues assessed in 2022, the move from required and voluntary dues to one amount will result in the county paying more because you haven't paid your voluntary dues in the past 3 years. You did in 2019, but not in the last 2 years. Does that make sense? Great. Let's go to the next slide and summarize this up so you can ask questions. Now that the dues structure has been approved by the Board of Directors, members will be engaged in the budget process. The first draft of the budget will be presented to the Budget and Finance Committee in July. Following committee approval, the draft budget will be reviewed at all the AOC district meetings in September, October, where we can really talk about them. Then in October, the AOC board will review and approve the draft budget before it is presented to the full membership for review in November at the business meeting held during the AOC annual conference. And with that, I will conclude, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Right.
And it's so good to be here with you. I can't begin to tell you. My home county, it's always a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, thank you for your presentation. Martha?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Gina, for all your hard work. It was a pretty turbulent year back in 2019 because in 2018, we had realized that, again, we were running at such a large deficit, and we were without, we had interim folks filling in for leadership at that time, and we pulled together a search committee, and we were very lucky to have you be I believe, the first woman executive director in the history of the Association of Oregon Counties. And I knew that with you in charge, this work would move forward. And I'd like to give a shout out to two other colleagues, and that is Commissioner George Murdoch, who actually was one of the folks who helped run the search committees and who actually worked very hard on due structure. And then Commissioner Alex Tardif, who is no longer a commissioner but a close friend, but I don't think we would have gotten through the crisis if we hadn't had him on board with he had a very good fiscal grasp of what was happening. And colleagues, I believe that it's very valuable to be, obviously, to be a member of the statewide association. I think that I've seen a whole new level of professionalism. I think in the organization, we've kind of upped our game. I've seen more efficiency and more presence, I think, during legislative sessions. And I think that this due structure will maintain the stability of the organization in a way it hadn't been maintained before, because everybody's dues adverse, we all know that. But in order to have a functional organization, you have to have the certainty in your money. As we all know, as we do our own budgets here in the county, you have to have the certainty in order to really maintain what you're doing. So thanks, Gina, for all the hard work. And I hope I'm going to see you at Sun River. I don't know if you're going to go see we're going to be having an AOC meeting in Sun River, I think this coming weekend, as a matter of fact. Yeah. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader.
but thank you
Yes,
for all you've done.
Thank you.
I spent many sleepless nights, I have to tell you.
I bet you have.
Anything
Yeah,
else?
well, thank you. It has been, in the recent past, just I won't say turbulent, but it's been challenging, and I appreciate you stepping in, Gina, and presenting the leadership needed to pull everything together. I have not been as engaged as I once was since COVID, and since HB 2017 passed, they've been keeping my plate pretty full here regionally. So I miss everyone, and look forward to us getting all back together sometime soon when all these restrictions are released, and we'll be back at Court Street having lunch together again, hopefully soon.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Any colleagues, anything you want to add? Commissioner Scholl.
Gina, thank you for coming and talking to us today. For the people of Clackamas County who'll be watching this video, the dues, $111,000. Can you tell them very briefly what kind of return the people and the businesses of this county get for their investment in the AOC?
Thank you, Commissioner Schull. One of the things that we do, and just one of the things, but the major thing that we do is advocacy for all 36 counties, and we work together. Our commissioners have specialties that they brought to the table with them when they became commissioners. We work hand in hand with commissioners to advocate for the needs of each citizen of every county. And Clackamas County commissioners have been very involved over the years with AOC, and we lobby at the Capitol and also at the federal government for any bills that help us. And of course, we work hard to make sure that bills that aren't kindly to us don't see the light of day. So that's the main thing that we do is assure that you commissioners have the tools legislatively to do the work that you need to do.
Thank you, Gina.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I concur. I think the legislative aspect and the assistance and lobbying as a voice, especially when all 36 counties are in agreement to get behind something, is powerful and influences our lawmakers in Salem. So it's a valued asset. I've always been a supporter of AOC. So, colleagues, is there any action particular or anything else we want to add today?
There's no decision today. This was just an informational update for you.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to add, Gina? Thoughts?
You're welcome to my office in Salem at any time or to my house in Villebois. Come on by.
Oh, you're at Villebois, okay. Great. Well, thanks for coming today, and glad to know that you're a Clackamas County resident as well. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
An added bonus.
Gary, it appears we're way ahead of schedule. Is that accurate?
Surprisingly so, yes. You are 45 minutes ahead of schedule, so you have choices. You could wait until the scheduled time is start of 3. We could ask staff to be ready in 15 minutes at 2:30 and start 30 minutes earlier, or any other option you choose. What would you like to do?
Okay, I am getting myself back on the 8th here, scrolling down. So actually, we have just one session left then,
Right?
Correct.
okay? So let's just recess. I think there's going to be a lot of people expecting to attend or watch at 3 o'clock. So let's just recess until 3 p.m.
Okay?
Okay.
So with that, we'll recess, and we'll be back at 3 p.m. Okay, thank you for joining us. We're reconvening our work session. It's 3 o'clock, and Gary, what's next?
Thank you, Chair Savas. The next policy session is supportive housing services funding. You have presenters today, myself, from County Administration, Rod Cook, Interim Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Online, Jill Smith, Director of Housing and Housing Services, and Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. The question before you today, Commissioners, is simple, and that is, what action, if any, you would like to take to maintain supportive housing services in Clackamas County until the Metro Supportive Housing Services funding is received, which we anticipate the majority of the funding will be received in May 2022, which is a little bit later than we originally anticipated. There will be funding that will start to filter in after July 1st, 2021, but not at the amount we originally anticipated. And there are several programs this does impact here at Clackamas County. They're outlined in your staff report. In particular, the Rapid Rehousing Program, the Metro 300 housing program for area seniors supported by Kaiser Permanente, the hotel model for 143 households, Serenity House and Haven House Corrections Program, and then, of course, the Veterans Village. I do want to quickly clarify the Veterans Village is fully funded, it always has been, within Health, Housing, and Human Services. Because of the anticipated supportive housing dollars, Health, Housing, and Human Services reallocated some of their existing money through H3S to other programs, anticipating the supportive housing funding would be available to support the Veterans Village. But we're not closing the Veterans Village. That's been fully funded for years. I do want to clarify that from a prior question you did ask. The total impact, if you do nothing after July 1st, could be up to 335 individuals. So that's why there's some urgency to decide what you would like to do moving forward. There are many options for you to consider as far as closing the funding gap. They're also listed in your staff report. We can discuss all of those today. They include accepting in advance from Metro for some projected funds to receive immediately before the rest of the supportive housing services funds arrive, a loan from the county general fund, use available funding within Health, Housing, Human Services and reallocate those dollars in the short term, use our American Rescue Plan Act funds, the ARPA funds, which we believe it may be allowable, but we still need to do some further legal analysis of that. Seek additional funding from outside sources, including the state or other nonprofit organizations, or other options you may identify, although we've really been thinking critically about this, and what I just mentioned are really the options for you to consider. Today, I really would like to make this, I hope, simple for you and just have you answer one of two questions. Do you support finding some form of what we call bridge funding to maintain these critical services after July 1st? Or would you like to discontinue those programs? Of course you don't want to discontinue those programs. I know everyone knows that. But if you do want to find some bridge funding, you could direct me to work with staff and perhaps a select group of commissioners on a small task force and come up in the next 2 weeks on what that may look like. So that's an option for you as well. But really, I want to stop talking at this point. I know you have a lot of questions. Thank you to Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Schrader. You did prepare a detailed list of questions in advance that staff did answer. It's included in your packet that I hope helps with your conversation today. Rod, Jill, and I am here to answer your questions, as is Stephen, County Counsel, Elizabeth, our Finance Director, the team, and many in the audience. We're all here to answer any questions you have to help you get closer to a decision. So with that, I'll stop. Happy to answer any questions you may have about a path forward.
Okay, thank you, Gary. I want to thank staff for, again, responding to our questions and also the help they provided late yesterday afternoon. I have done and spent a lot of time crunching some numbers, and appreciate working with Commissioner Schrader on that and with staff as well. So I have a lot to add, but I could see that Commissioner Fisher's got her light on, and I would really wanted to ask Commissioner Fisher to maybe share any ideas with or solutions, financial solutions to get us to where we need to go. I just got out, spent some time here in the break speaking to the treasurer, and I want to spend some time with Elizabeth, our finance director, Elizabeth Comfort, to get a better idea how we patch this together to make and support everything without, and again, meeting those goals of not trying to send anyone out of any kind of hotel residency where they're at, or put anyone on the street, or cut any program. So I don't think that any of us want to do that, and I don't think we intend to do that here today. But setting up a path and a structure to get there is important. So I like the idea, and I'm going to take you up on that. As far as kind of reinstating the previous administrator's housing task force that we once had to get that veteran shelter back up. It was extremely effective, and I'm looking forward to doing that again. So without any further delay, I will take any comments from Commissioner Fisher, anyone else, before I dive in with the numbers. So Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Savas. Appreciate you filling in this role today. So, Gary, question for you. Your comments today mentioned bridge funding to maintain the 335 individuals that would otherwise be removed from shelter. But I'm interested in, the Budget Committee did a placeholder of $10 million and then put an explanatory statement that we are committed to implementing our local implementation plan, which called for a $24.5 million investment. And so I'm just interested in what our decision today, how those two things align.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So yes, for your proposed budget, which you still have to adopt, which you will do next Wednesday, does allocate $10 million of anticipated revenue for the Supportive Housing Services Program, and then how you would spend that $10 million when you receive it, contingent on receiving the funds, and as the funds increase, you will do a supplemental budget to increase that budget. That really is the blueprint framework for after July 1st. Again, that's dependent on receiving the funds from Metro. We're not going to receive $10 million on July 2nd from Metro. So really, decisions you'll make now before July 1st, by the end of this month, is to anticipate, at least for the first quarter of the new fiscal year, how you will fund these, in this case, 335 impacted individuals. So there are many options available to you, but that's kind of the decision today, is what will you do in July and August and September as the money from Metro slowly trickles in, and until we get that mass funds for Metro we expect.
Okay, so where I have a concern is we're basically maintaining the status quo with this 10 million. Is that correct? Just, we're doing no harm by what we're doing today. Is that right?
I believe what we're talking about today is a ratcheting up or ramping up process as opposed to the 10 million. The 10 million was a placeholder.
Okay.
As if we were going to go full scale, so to speak. So it's two different models.
Okay,
if
what
I
I'm
could give Commissioner
interested,
Fisher-
what I'm confused, and I just want to make sure that we have the homeless services measure, the money, which some estimates have it being $32 million, which are expected to come in. Potentially this fiscal year, there are our taxpayers in Clackamas County, our businesses and high-income earners that will have been paying in to this tax. There will be an expectation that government will deliver on reducing chronic homelessness. And my concern is that we are able to begin the implementation of our plan, which I understand we have sent out requests for procurements, nonprofit entities have been planning to ramp up to meet this need that we know is a real concern from our community. So my concern is that whatever we do, we instruct our county administrator to look at any and all resources to implement our local plan. That would be my ask today.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we intend to do that. I think, Commissioner Fisher, I think that the, some of the modeling I've done can meet that 10 and then some. So I think I got some, I won't say great news, but some better news than I thought we would have here this morning. But again, it's just an estimate. They're just estimates based on some of the modeling. Did you have anything else you wanted? Did you have any success with any other sources of revenue that could augment the needs?
So I had sent information to Rod and Jill and staff. I'm not sure, Elizabeth, if I CC'd you on that, but to Gary, with just a list of where we could come up with additional resources. And a big chunk of that could be because we have people that are sheltered due to COVID, and that's a substantial amount of dollars that we're currently spending that we could utilize, potentially given our attorney's assessment of what those funds could be used for, is to use the ARPA, the American Recovery dollars for that, which could free up money for for implementation.
Okay.
So that is one of the things. I mean, there's just ways you can move money around, and so I've thought about that. I know our staff have been thinking about that. I know Elizabeth has been thinking about that. I know everyone is thinking about how we cobble all of that together. I am confident and fine with directing staff to do the work. I just want this board to be clear in what we're directing and directing the implementation of our plan as the funds become available. We obviously have to be fiscally sound and reasonable, and we don't want to take on risk, but we really need to meet the need. The people that voted for the homeless services measure expect us to do so. So there's a trust in government.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we're all going to work together. Hopefully today we can listen to each other and with intently, so we can get to a solution. So Gary, you had your hand up, and then I want to.
Two quick things to address Commissioner Fisher's comment. The RFP process, yes, we did go through the RFP process. We began that in anticipation of kicking off July 1st with hitting the ground running, but that was contingent on funding, and that was very clear in the RFP process. So if we need to take a pause, we are not violating our procurement rules or any of the process. It was entirely contingent on available funding. And then quickly, process-wise, I failed to mention, Commissioners, you are now sitting for this session as the Housing Authority Board of Clackamas County. My apologies to remind you of that. Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra has joined you. She is online.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So Commissioner Scholl, you're up next.
Yes, thank you. The chart on page 7, that's the Essential Services Budget FY 21-22 Supportive Housing Services. It breaks down the coming fiscal year, the requirements for those 5 programs that Gary spoke of by quarter. And quarter number 1, quarter number 2, that would take us from 1 July to the end of December. That amount is $5.1 million. $5.1 million to keep all those programs funded to the end of this year. That $5.1 million could be moved over from the general fund to the Housing Authority to give them what they need with no worries, nobody gets evicted, and your programs continue to the 31st of December. Now, we don't know how much money will be coming in from Metro between 1 July and the end of December, but it's going to be something. And then as we get towards the end of the second quarter, say November, December, we can look at that and say, okay, now we need to meet again and talk again about funding from 1 January to the end of March, the third quarter, right?
Yes.
And then by that time, we should be getting close to that pot of gold that we should be getting in to take care of the rest, the future after that. So I recommend we look at just the first 2 quarters, take care of it in-house. We don't need to go to Metro. We can take care of it by shifting money from the general fund to the housing authority. And then, again, when we get towards November, we'll sit down and look at it again for the third quarter. Seems easy enough to me. Housing authority gets what they need, and our people get supported. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Schrader, you had your light on. Did you?
I just want to say, I just want to assure people that we're very committed to implementing that has never been in question. What we're really trying to figure out, the larger question is the cash flow issue. It seems obvious to me that that's really primarily what it is. And what framework we're going to use to have that cash flow issue alleviated. And primarily our first piece of this is to make sure that a number of these opportunities, these things that we've already set up for people, are basically allowed, that we can at least maintain them. Because the issue we're facing is what I call a ramping up issue. All of us want to see this implemented, but because of the cash flow, what mechanism we use to stabilize and then build, I think, is what's going to be the most important. And I know that Commissioner Savas and I have talked about pulling together an ad hoc committee, similar to what we did, as you said, with the Veterans Village. And that would be across domains in the county with finance, DTD, potentially economic development, and pull those minds together to see not only how we can bridge this piece right now, but also really kind of have that cash flow continue as the money does come in. Because right now it's the uncertainty of this that is really, really kind of giving us the major problem that we're having, the uncertainty of cash flow. Am I right, Commissioner?
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what
yeah,
you
and
think.
I'll get to that in a moment about that uncertainty. But thank you for sharing that. Did you have anything else you wanted to?
No,
Okay,
that's it.
great. So thank you, Martha. The light on is from
Commissioner Fisher?
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, Commissioner Schrader just jogged a question in my mind, because government deals with uncertain cash flow all the time, and we budget and we plan and we send out requests for proposals and we do procurements and we operate within funding. But what happens with a new program like this? So say this board says we are implementing our local implementation plan for $24.5 million as this board approved and the Metro Oversight Committee approved. And let's say at the end of this fiscal year, the money from Metro comes in at $23 million and not 24.5, and we were overextended $1.5 million. Could we, within our rules, get the money from the next fiscal year and apply it to pay that back? Is that possible within public procurement?
Well, let me make, Commissioner Fisher, let me just offer something here and get into detail on that about the cash flow, because really it's a cash flow question more than anything else. And if we take $1 million from next year's budget, how do you backfill that as things go? So is there a ramp up? Will July 2022 look better than, or 2023 look better than 2022? And so, ideally, as the economy gets better, then that stream will hopefully there'll be a way to backfill, but maybe you'll have an appreciation a little bit for some of the detail that I think we're going to be looking at exploring. So I'm going to start from some kind of a basis. So I'm going to go back to and thank staff for this document, which is in the packet, the May 24th document that staff put together. And that's what we knew at the time. And that's the best information that we had from Metro. And shortly after that, we got a communication from Metro staff with a chart at the very bottom on the last page that showed percentages coming in, trickling in. And I sent an email to Metro staff, thank you, Gary, for arranging that, Friday morning, and saying, can you please give us the best case, or the worst case and the best case scenario for the funding between July 2021, 30 days from now, into 2022? And also, will you be giving us monthly reimbursements or quarterly reimbursements? And we got a response back, a nice response yesterday, and it sounds like they would like to see, or leaning perhaps towards a monthly disbursement. Didn't get a clear, defined answer, and they referenced back to the percentage chart and weren't able to give us the best case, worst case. So I had to incorporate the auditor's report, the Metro auditor's report, with regard to those best case, worst case scenarios. So Monday or yesterday, I asked staff, thanks Everett, and had to monetize that. Just take those percentages, take a $14 million worst case scenario like the Metro auditor provided, then look at a $24 million model that gets closer to what the recent estimates were, and then look at the $32 million model, because we heard, hey, it's going to look better than 24 million, it'll be 32 million. So we have those projections, and using the chart, again, that Metro reference, and I'm going to trust that percentage chart. When we monetize that, these numbers on the first page, as far as what we would see on July 2021, that's not going to happen. It's not that rosy right off the bat. No matter which model, whether you use the $32 million model or the $24 million model, the best case scenario, that's not going to happen. So we're not going to really see any substantial cash flow out of this measure for a while. But I don't think we need instant cash flow right out of the gate. So I think we can, and that's what we discussed with Rod and Jill yesterday. So, but we're going to have to do some belt tightening in a couple areas in the interim. So the next 6 months, is that what it was? I think it was the next 6 months, based on, again, that Metro percentage model that they provided from the city of Portland, or what it was, that the real money does not roll in any significant way until February. Well, January, February. So it starts to ramp up significantly. And of course, with a big chunk coming in April. And we don't know what that is. But I'm confident by using that model that, let's just say it's September and we can see some of those cash flows coming in, that we can say, oh, that's shaping up into one of these models, the 32, the 24, or the 14, is better or worse. And I think that we can do better projections as time goes on. So with that in mind, some of the measures that I thought would get us to fill that gap in the interim, knowing what we have available, is they maybe that $1.2 million that PLP that we had way back. Don't do that initially. Don't redirect that, and keep that in play to keep some of those programs alive, like the Veterans Village and so forth, so we don't handicap anything. That was one proposal that I stated. The other one was to, because the really high expense, I'm going to go back to this document, the really high expensive cost to house people in hotels. On page 3 of the document, you'll see that it says total for minimum SHS program July 1, 2021 to 2022 of April, and Jill and staff presented this. It's almost $12 million, right, to get us to April. And I did some rough math and it says, geez, that's $40,000 roughly, when you did some of that math. And actually, if you take that in a full year, it's actually $16 million. So we don't need a $12 million bridge. We need a $16 million bridge. So, but I'm confident that we can get there, but we're going to have to do some just adjustments. And again, I met with the treasurer to talk about getting them involved in this in the reinstatement of the administrators task force to fill the gaps and to make it happen. So I feel confident that we're not going to cut anything, and we're not going to boot anyone out of any hotels. And but the ramp up is, as far as any extra stuff, is going to be a little bit slower because of the cash flow challenge we have. I believe the $10 million we discussed as a placeholder in the budget, we didn't really have a source for that per se. We just anticipated, well, if 10 million comes in from Metro and this is the money we're talking about, that, I think that really was the source or the presumed source. So I would endorse, Administrator Schmidt's proposal of reinstating that, and we'll be rolling up our sleeves to bridge and ramp. Number one, bridge the existing programs and ramp up the new ones as the money comes in. And we'll just look at every month that goes by. I got another email from Councilor Lewis from Metro, and look forward to working with her and Metro staff to figure out how we can, maybe roll up our sleeves and dig down a little bit deeper. But I can understand that, to some degree, their reluctance to put a low and a high, but I didn't get a clear answer. So it doesn't give us a lot. And without really good data, we're not going to be able to make good projections. And I know that on May 24th, staff did the best they could with what they had. Knowing all of that, I think the best thing we can do here today is agree to some strategies and work, and we can give updates week by week or as needed, but I have no intention of cutting anything. So if we have concurrence from all of us to do that and work with staff closely in the coming weeks, I'm ready to go to work and help bridge that. And Rod, anything you want to add to that?
No, I appreciate all the commissioners' work on this and administrators' work, all the work that's been done behind the scenes. So I think we're starting to see a pathway to success. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. The other thing I just looking at my notes here, I forgot to mention is that the idea of a loan, I played that out in the models, and at least on one model, there's no way we can even pay it back. So it's not a good idea. That's why we need to bridge and ramp. So it's really both. And by doing that, we can get there. If the numbers start looking better, maybe a loan is a good idea to maybe we can ramp up faster. But it really depends on how that cash flow comes in from the measure as the tax collection comes in. So maybe in August, September, if it's looking better, maybe there is a way to phase in a loan from Metro to fill that gap to ramp up faster. But we don't need to, I don't think we need to panic. We just need to be very, very savvy and very strategic on how we move forward. So I see 2 lights on. So whose light's on?
Commissioner Fisher?
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Commissioner Savas. I really appreciate all your nimble thinking and strategizing on this. While you were talking, I was double tasking and texting Elizabeth because I really wanted the answer to my question, which she did answer. What we are able to do in our county government is we can work to implement the local implementation plan at the amount that was approved by this commission and the Metro Oversight Committee. We can work in all these ways of looking at the various funding streams to bridge to make sure that we are working on that. And if we did use our county general fund or something else to provide some of that bridge financing, we are able to budget to pay us back in the next fiscal year. So that is what I was wanting to see if we were able to do that, to be that nimble, because we know we're ramping up this year. And eventually the resources, we will have a better idea and they will become more stable. So I wanted to share that. I appreciate the commission's commitment towards the local implementation plan. I know that you're aware that that was a months-long process with a lot of research from community members and our staff and really digging in deep to figure out what we needed to do. And so much work has been going into what programs, what services, how are we going to address homelessness individually for our specific needs in Clackamas County. So I think it's really important that we stay true to the process and figure out how we creatively do the bridge funding.
Yeah, so appreciate that, and we will be working with, as I mentioned earlier, before we started, or when we started, we'll be working with Brian Nava from the Treasurer and also Elizabeth Comfort from Finance, and looking at models and crunching the numbers and figure out how we do that, and how we do that in a way that is strategic. The other thing I had to put it out there right now that we can't forget is that, and Metro's made it clear, I don't disagree with that, any money from Metro is contingent upon the IGAs, an agreement on the IGAs from all parties signing. So we've got to get past that. And Jill Smith indicated that, there are targets July 1st, but from talking to legal counsel earlier this morning, as I understand it, there's 2 IGAs, one an interim and one final. So we'll have to navigate that. So we'll make sure we get legal counsel involved in these discussions as well. But I just want to caution that, the extra stuff, until we know the pace, we really don't know the number. And no one's willing to say or commit that the number's $14 million a year, or it's 24, or it's 32, or 36, or whatever the number is. So until we know better, we don't know how much we can actually spend or be able to pay back in any kind of scenario. So those are my words of caution. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for this, Commissioner Savas, because I know you've worked hard on the various scenarios, and I think that's why we are suggesting the work group that is similar, again, to what we did when we initiated the Veterans Village, because it pulls together finance and all the expertise across a domain. I know that you and I have worked on these things together. I'd like to work with you on it again, because I certainly want to see these programs remain, as well as we move forward and do more work with the chronic homeless, which is really a case of emergency. And I think every strategy should be on the table. I think that that's kind of what the message is that we have today, but we still have some more detailed work to do to see which scenario, which strategy is the best. And we are going to have to do it quickly. But we do have excellent staff, and I would strongly suggest, commissioners, that that's the pathway we take. Commissioner Shull, you came up with some scenario. Commissioner Fisher has come up with scenarios. I'd like to get together with our staff and pick the best one under the circumstances, knowing that we are all committed to this, moving this forward one way or the other. I don't know if Metro, I suppose, we have another scenario was to have them advance us some dollars. That could be part of a scenario. I think that's really what we're going to do to try and get things pulled together to make this happen.
Yep.
So if we're all in kind of consensus, which I think we are, that we're going to work on a strategy quickly, I feel pretty good about that.
Yep. I think between all the different ideas and the funding models, that we'll come up with one and make a decision here as soon as it's appropriate. When we have a model we have confidence in, to basically codify how we're going to move forward, so everyone knows, and everyone knows what to expect with the ramp up of services that was approved by the voters. So we want to get there as well. Lots of moving parts. The IGA piece, we need to make sure we get that going pretty quick, so that we're eligible for funding as soon as possible, and building a good communication bridge with Metro and the staff that are assigned to this. I think would be really helpful, and I think we're in a better place. So what direction do you need from us today, other than I think the work group task force might be the first step, and coming back with everything we discussed here today with the intention of we're not going to stop anything, we're not going to cut anything, and we're going to maintain one way or another. So I think that's the good message here today. Gary?
Yes, agreed. So if that is your direction, it sounds like it is to form a internal task force in the next 2 weeks to come up with a solution and report back to the full board. The full board makes the decision, but the task force can noodle it and more nimbly come up with options and bring it back to the full board within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. I have not had a chance, obviously, none of us have to chat with Chair Smith, but when she comes back, I need to inform her so she can get some confidence. My hope is that we're all on the same page. Our hope is that all 5 of us can support whatever strategy it is. So that means that we're going to have to be open to each other's thoughts to get there. Commissioner, is that Commissioner Fisher's line?
No, it's me again, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Savas. I just want to say, again, that I have concerns about the ripple effect that this that even 2 weeks has in our service delivery system and our nonprofit sector. I think the strongest message that this board needs to give today is that we are committed to the rollout of the local implementation plan. And that means that we are going to be working to come up with the funding to make that possible. The bridge funding, simply because the requests for proposals have gone out, our service delivery system has been planning and getting ready for this procurement. We do not want to put the system that we currently have in a state of disarray. A lot of planning has gone into the plan that we approved, and we need to stay the course.
Yep. And, I just want to give staff some breathing room. I know that puts a lot of pressure on them, but they have some vacant positions they need to fill and need to build their organization. So, we're not, even if the money was dumped on us today, we're not ready to go full throttle on this. I think we need to recognize that.
Well, I think also
there's going to be a ramp up,
we
Commissioner.
need to recognize that the plan that was developed had a ramp up. It wasn't expected that all services were going to be delivered immediately. A great deal of the planning from the community was to build the infrastructure within our nonprofit sector to deliver the services. It was never anyone's idea that it would all be accomplished immediately, but that's built into the plan. So veering from the plan would be a big mistake for this board.
So if you remember back in April 13th, when we approved the local implementation plan, I spoke a lot about the details, asking just for what you're stating, and I just haven't seen them. So please, if the work plan, the structure, all that stuff, show us.
Well,
Because I think it's
sure
imperative, Fisher,
Yeah,
please.
okay.
I think it's imperative that it's easy to say those things, but we've got to have the structure. Without the structure, it's hard to implement a plan. Without the people and the staff and the vacant positions, it's hard to implement that. So, it puts a lot of pressure on everyone in the room, staff included. I just sympathize with staff and everyone else who's under the gun when there's not the essentials in place. So I think we need to get that there. And if you've got something, please share it with us.
Yeah, I have the inspiration of the process that I was there every single meeting and going through what services were going to be provided and the interest and excitement from those members simply saying, we are really going to do this. This is really going to happen. We are going to be able to help people out of chronic homelessness. And the framework that Metro provided, that is our local implementation plan, lays the groundwork, and within the appendixes of that 120-some page document is a lot of detail. Now, is that all of the detail that the project teams are going to be utilizing? Absolutely not. That is implementation is for staff. We are for policy and direction. Our job is to direct our staff to do the work that we know that our residents demand of us.
Yeah, and as policymakers, to be honest with you, and I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, but you can imagine the fact that we've been wrestling with this for 3 weeks. It came as a surprise to all of us that, number one, the funding hasn't showed up. Number two, the infrastructure that we have here isn't there. We don't have it. So there's no blame on anyone, right? But it's a fact of reality. So I get the passion, I get the energy and the synergy to make all this happen, but we just can't build it out of nothing. We need to start somewhere, and staff needs the support to get there. We need to support them. The direction is here, it's clear, but we need to put it all in place. And so all we need is a little bit of understanding that it's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but we're all committed here. Oh, your light's not on. It is now. There you go.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Fisher, because you've had a big heart for this, and you were our liaison. And I know I can say with all my colleagues, we're committed to seeing this roll out. I think we're just trying to figure out, like we do with all budgets, what the cash flow is going to be, and that's what we need a little bit of time for. We will fully implement this plan. We will fully implement it as the money comes in. And right now, we are committed to work out the scenarios. I think that's pretty clear in order to get us there. So I'm also going to thank some of our nonprofits. I serve on Clackamas Workforce Partnership. I am their liaison, friends with the Clackamas County Business Alliance. I was on the board of Clackamas Women's Services and recently worked with them to get a grant for their services. And I'm just looking at all the folks, NAMI, Impact Northwest, Northwest Family Services runs a program, or excuse me, I think it's, yes, Northwest Family Services that I helped pull together, which is Children's of Incarcerated Parents back in the day, and I was one of the founders of the Children's Center. So all of the information and all of the, wonderful communications we've had, urging us to move forward with this is all taken to heart. Because I think I can say as the longest, kind of sitting commissioner here, that this county has always been dedicated to our nonprofit sector and to building the infrastructure. And that, I think, was one of the major goals, as you just said, to go ahead and build up those sectors and continue to build them up as our partners as we move forward with this. And I want to just say, I feel this is a difficult conversation to have of how we're going to manage this. But I am kind of a stay calm and carry on kind of person. And I think if we pull together that group, that we will be able to figure this out, and we will get this fully funded. So I think we're all on the same page with this. And once again, I want to thank all of our folks. They're all listed here, the Farmers Market even, Parrot Creek, Housing Oregon, Unite Oregon, the Transition Progress, Portland Business Alliance. Thank them for working on this issue, and I'm going to thank them ahead of time for having the patience to let us really work through how we're going to manage the ramp up. So thank all of you for that. And I have a history, a solid history of being your supporters and always supporting you. And that will not change. Commissioner Fisher.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah,
We have-
thank you. I think that we are probably ready for a motion, and so I would like to instruct the county administrator to secure the bridge funding to begin implementation of the local implementation plan.
Commissioner Fisher, I would appreciate, until we have better detail, that we maybe not make a motion here. I think we've got some pretty good direction, and we'll come back with something more firm. I just think we just need to, again, follow the staff administrator's advice here, and the direction's pretty clear. We have no intent. Staff knows and hears, but I just don't want to get bogged or confused down with a particular motion that, maybe.
Is there a concern with the motion?
It's not clear to me. Commissioner Scholl, your light's on?
Yes. The motion would have to include a specific amount for a certain amount of time. That's why I recommended we just look at first and second quarters. We know what that is $5.1 million. And if we focus on that today, at the end of the year, we could look at this again and see where we're at, take care of the third and fourth quarters.
Well, so Commissioner Scholl, let me just drill down on that again. So the 5.1 is on this.
Yes, it's on page 3 of the Housing Authority's chart here, where they list out the 5 housing concerns that Gary Schmidt mentioned, and then it's broken down by the 4 quarters of the FY 21-22 fiscal year, and it's got an amount for each of those 5 programs, and that's what you sent us. That's what I've been reading for the last 3 days.
Yeah, so Commissioner Scholl, the challenge with that is that might define the need, doesn't define the source. And so we need to make sure we can marry the source and the need together. And that's why I think it's probably better not, we don't need them, Gary, do you need a motion today? I think you've got direction, but do you actually need a motion?
It's not necessary, but you could make a motion, of course. So Commissioner Fisher has made a motion. Either you either could rule it out of order or wait for a second.
Okay, well, I need just better definition to support, to vote for it, and I want to make sure that, again, I want to make sure we have consensus. So,
Well,
if
my
you
motion-
want me to take a stab at it, I'll take a stab at it.
To clarify, my motion was to instruct the county administrator to secure bridge funding to begin implementation of the local implementation plan. That's what I heard from this group. I heard that we are committed to the local implementation plan. And yes, we have to work out the details. We have to figure out where that bridge money is going to come from so that we can have cash flow.
Okay,
But
so,
with that doesn't mean that we wouldn't come back and approve whatever plan that is, because we would. But we would be instructing the county administrator to come up with bridge funding so that we can begin implementation of the local implementation plan approved by this board and approved by Metro. I think that's, Gary, is that broad enough for you to have direction?
That's very, yes, it's
well,
very,
so maybe it's a detail issue, but I see two things, a bridge and a ramp. So if you could change the verbiage, you got me. But to say that we can bridge it suddenly or anything else, or it sends the message that we're able to bridge something that doesn't exist, right? With a structure we don't have.
I'm directing the county administrator. That's it. He runs the county. He can figure out what we make a proposal for us specifically to approve.
Okay. I'm absent a second, I'm happy to make a motion. So I see, isn't there another light on?
It's Commissioner Fisher.
Okay. So Commissioner Schrader.
No, I have nothing else
Okay,
to say.
I'll turn your light off. So I'll take a stab at a motion. I move we direct staff to reinstate the Administrators Housing Task Force and bring back a plan within 2 weeks that maintains current funding for all the programs and a plan to meet the needs of implementing 26-210.
That's good. I'll second that, Paul.
Okay, to move in a second. Any other conversation?
Yes,
Commissioner
I have a question. You're talking about finding funding to take us through the end of the fiscal year, to the end of the fourth quarter?
I don't have those details. Again, this is really detail-oriented, so I guess that's why my motion was I won't say vague, but it was high level. It was a high-level motion to get there, and then we'll come up with a plan in a couple of weeks that will give a better clarity and detail estimates on how we get there.
This really is a financial analysis that needs to happen. It's really, the devil is in the details. That's how I've been seeing it, quite frankly.
We just
And
don't know
that's
how
what
much
we
we're
lack.
getting.
Yeah.
We just don't know how much we're getting.
We're trying to be certain with something that right now is uncertain. And it will all become clear and it will happen. How we navigate right now is going to be critical. That's how I see it.
So seeing no other, could you poll us?
Commissioner Leenstra,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Chair Savas.
Aye. Thank you so much, colleagues. We're going to get there.
Okay.
We're going to get there. So I want to thank staff for all their work and looking forward to working with all of you very soon.
All right, thank you.
Gary, is there anything else that we need to
that's
do
it for today, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned.